Hey guys, how are you today? My guest today is Colin Kingsmill. And boy, oh boy, this guy's got a life to be reckoned with. He has such a vast history of, riches and travel and entrepreneurship and success and experiencing failures and all different types of triumphs and trials and tragedies. And I'm looking at his bio, and it's just there's too much to list. And it's not often that happens, that someone is too much to list. So what I do want to say about him, and I'm reading from his information, is that he says when people get stuck at critical transition points in their lives, that he assists them in deconstructing the stories in their heads, overcoming fear, and reconstructing a new narrative to move forward. And that's what Lager Counseling Service is about, and Allison Answers. We want to help people get there. And he helps people overcoming fear and reconstructing a new narrative to move forward, living their authentic selves and thriving. He has an acute ability to sense, make in this complex world. His ability to fast-track clarity of mind with insight and humor guides people of all ages through relationship dynamics, confidence building, self-improvement, overcoming challenges, and achieving desired results. Colin believes that we have lost touch with our shared humanity and have become distracted by division, identity politics, negative news cycles, corporate and special interest greed, and other forces that crush our souls. He is on a mission to help people rediscover their humanity. I love this. He be fearless and free, and remember who they are and who they will be to change the world. Some of the things that, I could highlight is that today, Colin Kingsmill Coaching, he guides and advises exceptional individuals, founders, CEOs, and entrepreneurs through radical change to perform at peaks they haven't yet imagined. He is the co-founder of Whole Human Coaching, where he coaches leaders and their teams from a modern 360-degree approach that helps with rapid transformation and leadership. What entrepreneur can't use that? He is authoring a book called Fear Less, Crossing the Bridge from Fear to Bliss. He is also a strategic advisor to the health, healing, and transformational platform. It's called Kalo, kalolife.com. And he says he's finally living a life of integrity, and he's helping others to do the same. We'll get into more of his journey and the things that have brought him to this higher level of coaching people through probably these incredible experiences that he's had with people of all walks of life. So without any further ado, I'm looking forward to what we're going to experience and learn about how to transform our own lives and create new stories that are actually dictating the direction that we're going in. I do ask that you like, share, subscribe to this podcast. It really, really helps me to help other people and to get the word out. I do not do this for money. I do not monetize this podcast. What I do ask, if you do like it, if you could share it, because that is one way that I can achieve the mission that I have and that my guests have to really honestly help people. And also, if I can help my guests to reach a higher level of where they're going in life, I would love to do that. So please, if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel, I really could use a lot more subscribers so that I can do more functions in there. I don't do a lot in my YouTube except put these podcasts in there. So it really helped me a lot. I would so appreciate it. Without any further ado, here's Colin. Hey guys, how are you today? It is Allison from Allison Answers and Lager Counseling Services. As I mentioned in the bio, I have Colin here. And what I want to kind of frame this for you, because I want you to listen for your pearls, the things that are really going to make a difference in your life, and listen in that manner. Because what Colin shared with me off camera is that his main mission in life is to end our psychological suffering and help us to achieve a sense of freedom. I'm going to have him explain it further, but I want you to consider that all of us, no matter whatever heights we reach or depths we reach in our life, we're all struggling with similar things. And Colin's whole thing, which I love, you're going to learn how to cut through all the minutia to get to a personal freedom in a quicker way than the struggles that we've had to go through to get there. So I just want to thank you so much for being here, Colin. And I'm looking so forward to just the wealth of goodness you're going to share with us and how we can grow and learn from you. So without any further ado, us um, tell us about a little of your history that
Sure.
brought you to be at this place to share and to help people become free.
Right. I think it's kind of a two-part story, actually. The first part of my life was super driven by ambition and super driven to succeed and super driven to um, I don't know, have more, be better, be cared for, all of these things that I think were the result of some core wounds of unworthiness as a child, as a kid that seemed very different than everybody else. And you know, I had such a dichotomy in that whole thing because my father was an artist, and at that time it was very difficult financially, and yet my family was from Switzerland, and there was abundance over there, and I'm like, well, wait, why is this so difficult?
Yeah.
So I decided at a very early age that I would be and have and do all of the standard markers of success, right? So, I mean, you know them all. We don't have to repeat them here. But
Yeah.
I really did it all by the time I was 35. I was living in Switzerland. I had a financial services business. I had 25 employees. I had the cars I wanted. I had the trips I wanted. All the stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I just woke up one day. It was April 6, 2001, and I said to myself, "This is just all wrong. Everything I've been striving for 15 years, I got it. I checked it all off, and I'm not happy. On the contrary, I'm miserable. I was probably a super a-hole to people, not very nice, depressed, full of anxiety, and that day, I said enough, and I decided to give it all away and start over from scratch. So,
Okay, I just
so
have to
that's
stop you for 1 second.
yeah,
Did you give it all away? I'm just curious because
I did.
I heard that.
Yeah,
Like that was
yeah.
illuminated to me. That's a big move.
It was weird, Alison. It was like I wanted to shed like all the
Yes.
cloak, I just wanted it
Yes.
gone, right? So I gave
Yes.
Cartier watches to my cleaning lady. I gave mountains of Italian suits to my colleagues that were going to stay in the sort of that financial services world. And moved back to Vancouver. So
Wow.
I moved back to somewhere that I thought was more sort of natural and connected to nature, and
Yes.
somewhere where I could start over again. So that's really that's really part one of the story, and I dove into everything self-help, right? Everything. Eckhart Tolle, Joe Dispenza, The Power of Now. The
Yeah.
roster, right?
I'm
The
going to Dr. Joe
classics.
next week.
Oh, he's great. I
Yes.
love
Love
him.
him. Yes.
But for the last 20 years, I really didn't. I knew everything up here,
Yes.
but I didn't embody it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this step that I took, and it was only recently when I uncovered some childhood trauma, some small t childhood trauma, through a series of letters I should have never gotten. But I did, and I read them, and it just everything came back. But I finally decided, I finally figured out where that core wound of unworthiness had come from, and what I had been striving in the first chapter to get and have and achieve, and what I had been doing in the second chapter, which was not really being good with boundaries, not being good with able to say no, saying yes a lot of the times when I didn't want to, and doing a bunch of consulting work that I was starting to not love over time.
Yes.
It was getting and it was funny because in the second chapter I wasn't seeking fabulous. That's what my coach calls it. I wasn't seeking fabulous, but I was living pretty fabulously. Like,
Yeah.
it's funny when you give up trying to strive for something, all of a sudden it's there in front of you. And so the super yachts in Monaco and all these things over the years were, quote unquote, were fabulous, but they weren't really, still weren't really doing much for me. You know, it was beautiful
Yes.
living on the coast of the Adriatic and stuff like that. But I think what I needed to do was I needed to have another shock, like another shock wave through the system, that allowed me to embody everything that I've learned over the last 20 years. So I finally started to medicate. No, I stopped that.
Started microdosing and shit. Yeah.
Pardon the pun, but Freudian slip. No, I stopped doing that stuff and really just started to embody it, and it's been so transformative. And that's when we speak of that freedom, if you like, right? What I mean by freedom is kind of a liberation from the chains that are keeping you down or have kept us down, right? And that's really my end game, because I've had a really fascinating life and full of a tapestry of experiences, good and bad and evil and everything in between. I'm really now taking those 2 chapters and going, okay, how can, because I see our neighbors down the street who are suffering, and our friends who are suffering, and family. So how do we get to this freedom from psychological suffering faster than it took me? So that's really my thing.
I have a lot of questions. So basically, one is because you were saying a transformation for you is the meditating piece, right? That's what you just said, right? Not medicating. And basically, yes. But what I really can honestly say myself is that was the game changer for me in my life. That changed everything, because to go into the quantum field in a state of bliss and to see what's available there is just, nothing is ever the same. So and also the fact that you have, and I feel like, God, source, whatever you want to call, whatever,
any of the above are all good.
I feel like you have like an authority to be able to communicate this kind of a thing, because you've been in these very like upper echelon like experiences that everybody's thinking they want to get to, right?
Right.
So you can say, hey, let me tell you about it, and tell you the human experience of this. And let me be honest with you, because, right. And I think so, even in a moment, and this is like, I didn't think I would do this, but even if you could just share those moments of being with people who were of like utter fame, and it's not just to explain what you were feeling inside as you were there.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a really interesting question, because for some reason I got exposed at a very early age to some very big names in the world, right? And maybe it was because I went to, university in Switzerland or the American University in Switzerland. So I met some names that are, standard bearers today, lots and lots of families that you would recognize right away. And the funny thing is, like, they're just human. They're just like everybody else. They have exactly the same issues and problems. The only thing that changes is the contextual environment, right? So you can be on a 65-meter super yacht that's full of kittens and ceramic cats, and the person loves their cat, and they're, but just a cat lady,
exactly.
So that's why part of my mission is also, let's rediscover our humanity, because the base level of all of us is a singularity, I think, right? And so I've been put in situations.
To you. I just have to say something to you. I want everybody to hear you, but I feel like most times when somebody comes on a podcast that I don't know, I know that God's involved somehow. So just this morning, now I have a mentor. He leads a group for us, whatever. His name's Ed Milet. His podcast, he was talking about the solo podcast, exactly what you're saying. He said, I've had the opportunity to be with people of all different, billionaire, doesn't matter. And he said, we all wake up sometimes and want to put the covers over our head. And he was just like bringing it down to this one level. And I had unique opportunity as a child. My father owned a movie studio, and he had like a business that built scenery for plays and movies and commercials. I was around a lot of like well-knowns, actresses.
Yeah.
And they meant nothing to me because some of them were really cranky and whatever. And they didn't, so I had that opportunity to see humanness, right? So I don't think it's a coincidence. So I just love that we're sharing this with others, because when you were saying, oh, I had this opportunity to be with these people, the first thing I thought is, I feel like God put you there so that you could share this.
I'm pretty sure he did,
Yes.
or source energy did, or the universe, however we want to label it, but
Whoever they are.
but
Yes.
but
Mhm.
it did put me there, because
Yes.
I think and so, I've been in George Clooney's villa. I've been in private jets. I've met Hillary Clinton. I've met Elton John. I've been to, Rothschild homes, and I'm like, it's another house, and I'm more interested in the history and the story behind it. But you're right. I think when you realize that and when you realize that we are all just one, and you bring it
Yes.
down to the base level of our basic needs and our basic emotions,
Yes.
the rest is just, I don't know, the rest is just stuff, and stories and patterns. And I think I think when you take away the outer crust, if you like, however it's embellished, we're just simple human beings that crave, connection and
Yes.
love and a family and friends
Yes.
and clean food and, the basics.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I'm babbling on, but
No, you're
I
not.
think we get, I think that point of, it doesn't matter what is around you,
Yes.
it and what you're surrounded with, and what your lifestyle might be. I often, somebody will say, somebody will be I'll have a client complaining about something, right? And then I'll be like, I'll remind them maybe that they're in the 1%,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And they might say, no, I'm not. I'm like, no. You have a condo in downtown Vancouver. You are at the pinnacle of humanity in terms of or in terms of what you have at your disposal. So I think it's always good to remind ourselves in the West how good we really have it.
Yes.
Even though it might not seem that way.
Mm-hmm.
So again, when I speak about rediscovering our humanity, it's also, I also see it in a how do you connect with the rest of with the people around you, right? How can we look at our shared experiences, right? Because I feel like we've really lost that in today's society, especially when you walk downtown that might be hit with or suffering from a lot of homelessness. It's not home. It's not. I don't think it's homelessness. I think it's we've abandoned them. They are, mentally ill or have addictions, and we somehow have gotten numb, and we're able to turn away and walk past, right? So, if I think if people start to think of of our shared humanity, we're on this little pebble, right? That's spinning, what is it, 1,650
I don't like
kilometers an
thinking
hour on
about
its
that.
axis, right? It's
I
crazy.
hate thinking about that.
We're on
so
a little rock
scary.
flying through the universe in the
What the
dark.
hell is going on here? We're freaking crazy.
Right?
And when you were talking about that guy with the whatever you said, condo downtown Vancouver, I'm thinking, isn't it like, because I do that, I'll reevaluate. I'm like, wait, okay, you own all this stuff, you have whatever, right? But then what really comes down to is, how do I feel inside? Like, what is my state of being? And like, if it doesn't feel right, if I feel trapped, right? Whatever it is, like, none of that other stuff, it can't take it away, right?
Yeah, it doesn't. And it's also connected to the concept of living in integrity. So when we feel bad, right, and it means our body and our mind and our soul is recognizing that that something needs to change. And so if you get those pings, those might be signs for you even to say, oh, you know what, maybe I'll shed this, or I'll shed that, or I'll transform this. And because it certainly, it weighs you down, that stuff.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah.
In your like as you got to that point and you gave it all away and you came back,
Yep.
like what was
Yep.
that second phase? What happened then?
Yeah, the second phase was really about sort of self-discovery, right? Before that date, and I actually had a bit of a spiritual awakening that day. It was really weird. I can tell you about that another time, but it was like something happened, and
I'm all about spiritual awakenings. I don't think anything's weird. You should hear my shit.
Well,
you wouldn't even believe it.
Well,
oh
so
my
my friends were so stressed out that I was so stressed out. They're like, you're gonna have a heart attack at 30. Like, dude, what are you doing? They coerced me to go and do some Reiki and something called rebirthing. And rebirthing is where it's designed as a breathing technique to get your breathing back to pre-birth, basically.
Yeah.
So it's a reset of your breathing. Well, mine turned into a total wacky past life regression experience where all these lives, I don't know, but I saw all of these stories where I was the protagonist all over the world. And I came out of that going, oh, hold on. I don't have to get everything done right now, and nobody's judging me. So I began a journey. So the first chapter was get, have, prove. The second part of the journey was, once I had that pivot moment, I then started this self-discovery work. So I read everything I could get my hands on, from Wayne Dyer to Eckhart Tolle to Deepak Chopra, all of our go-tos, and read everything, went to spiritual classes, did yoga, decided that I wanted to get also out of financial services and into something that was more me. And I'd always loved construction and design and building. And so I got into destination real estate and loved it. I loved that experience of transforming places, right? Taking them from nothing to, a ski resort or a beach resort or another hospitality destination. And so I stopped with the struggle of the first part, but I've still been over the subsequent 20 years really trying to get to me, like trying to get to that place of discovery, and it was really through meditation, guided meditation, that for the first time I've been able to get to the real me. And
you know what you were looking for, like when you were saying, like, I want to get to the real me? Do you know what that was, that yearning was?
Yeah, I think it was a desire to understand what was the meaning of life. Like, why are we here?
Yes.
What's the point, right?
I'm like, I have an existential crisis like every 10 minutes. Seriously.
Well,
yeah.
We do, and I think I think part of the problem is that in our modern Western society, which is driven by certain economic and financial and levers, which are great on one hand, they've allowed us to live in much more abundance than before, and much more abundance than a lot of people, but it also has a very negative side, right? The news cycles, or the mainstream media news cycles, or the social media that keep you trapped in sort of negative spirals. So when you say you have an existential crisis, I'm like, yeah, no kidding, because we are bombarded by so much crap. So one of the first things that I say to people is turn off the news, turn off your social media, or dial it down, or at least recognize that it's the same thing as going to the donut store. So decide how much toxicity you want inside of you.
100%. Yeah, that's good.
Right? It's because it's a decision we make.
Yeah.
to go this way or go that way. But the red pill and the blue pill are pretty different
Mhm.
things.
I don't watch the news at all, and all of a sudden I'll like find something out. I'm like, oh, holy shit, that's happening. But I do it for my well-being. But so when you went on this, like you were looking like to,
Yep.
I guess the meaning of life or what are we doing here? You said it differently, but so what did you discover
I discovered
or discovering maybe?
I think discovering is probably a better word for it.
Mhm.
I discovered that I think it's kind of hard to articulate. I discovered that we're just all connected energy,
Yeah.
and what you do with that is that's the purpose, that's
Yeah.
the meaning. So it's what radio station or what frequency do you want to be on today
Yeah.
to make an impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, that's fine too, but just recognize that we are in control of our energy, what we emit, and who we connect with and how we connect, and the impact that we want to make and can make.
Yes.
So make a decision. And if you don't recognize that, then life can be pretty miserable. You can live
Yes.
like sort of the Walking Dead zombie state, getting through life on antidepressants and anti-anxiety and other pills that we're fed, right?
Yes.
As opposed to understanding that your health is inside of you and your mental health is your responsibility. And what you can do with that then, if you decide to, if you like my radio station analogy and you dial into that source energy, it's incredible what starts to happen. I mean, and the universe responds really quickly too. Like I was thinking about something the other day, and I literally got a call from an ex-colleague of mine in New York yesterday, out of the blue. Like, haven't spoken to him in 6 months.
Yes.
He's like, hey, do you want to come and do this, because I see you're doing that, and let's have a conversation for our with my team. So we call it, I think you and I would call it serendipity, but no, maybe you and I would call it something more than serendipity.
Synchronicity. Yeah.
Synchronicity,
Yeah.
tapping into that, into the
Mhm.
flow.
Yeah.
So that's really where I got to. I got to the space of us being all connected.
Yes.
That we're just a bunch of energy. So how impactful do you want to make that energy during this time?
I love that. You know what I'm so curious about? This is like, and I never say any of this publicly because I don't know, maybe I'm embarrassed, but I think, because this is part of like my struggle with that. So one of the things I do, or I have it in my book, like that if you just look at a snapshot of your life in all different areas, it gives you the information back to tell you like what stories are inside or what you believe, right? So like what you're describing, like you're creating it, right? So it's coming, it's just, so you can just tell by it coming in. And you were saying it happens quickly. I find that the more connected I get to source, the more I understand that I'm energy, the quicker it happens, right? So this is what I'm curious about, because what I'm finding is that as I'm getting closer to that, I wonder how I'm just currently having situations where I'm returning back to these like old things, like financially. And I'm like, I've reached this, like, what's going on? And I'm trying to recreate and think abundantly. And I can't understand what is inside of me that, the psycho-cybernetics or whatever the hell it is. It's bringing me, what's my set point and how do I get out? And then I'm crying and then I'm like, oh no, I'm crying. So now now everything's going to go wrong. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and then I'm negative and I'm like, I'm never negative. So do you know what I mean?
Couple of thoughts. Couple of
Yes,
thoughts.
tell me.
First of all, be gentle to yourself, because we're allowed to cry. We're allowed to have those moments of scariness, right? It's a big scary world on this rock, right? So don't beat yourself up first.
Yeah.
The second thing is, I often think of a metaphor or an analogy of like a vat of oil or water. In the culture that we live in, right, which is so hyper novel, and our bodies and our minds and our evolutionary biology are barely catching up, right?
True.
We're still the same as we were 200 years ago, before
Hmm.
all of our tools and devices and stuff like that. So the body and the mind and the soul are catching up to a hyper novel world that we live in. So what we tend to do at hyper novel, and what we tend to do, I'm not articulating properly, is we tend to, on the surface of things, do our affirmations and say, everything's right and good, but then there's a vat of negativity below that. And that's what I really work with people on is,
Yes.
okay, you're telling yourself this, and you're not going to feel good. I'm going to look at my vision board. I'm going to do all the right things for 15 minutes. But then for the rest of the day, I'm going to subconsciously tell myself 100 stories about lack or about not being good enough, because that's really where it comes from, right? There is an origin story in there with you, and with all of us.
Yeah.
There's an origin story of, where did this start? Okay. Where is it emanating from? So what I try and do is let's get below the surface of positivity, and we're all happy, blah, blah, blah. And let's get into that vat. Let's dive into the crap, because you're telling yourself some stories. Maybe they're overlapping. And I try and because what happens then is we see life through these lenses. They become more and more opaque, and your clarity and your purpose and your power too, right? Like, because that stuff debilitates you, doesn't it?
Yes.
Like, right, really, really quickly. So your power is diminished because you're not seeing clearly. You've got these conditioning stories. So it's recognize the stories, what they are, kind of deconstruct them in a journal or something. Try and find the origin story. Forgive that person. Love her, and love the people around you that were only coping as well at that time, right? That's all they knew. And decide, make the decision, which of these stories and conditionings is serving me today. Right. Because then you can decide, well, it's about 10%, the fear flight thing. Maybe I'll keep that, because I shouldn't run in front of a truck or a car. But 90% of the story that you were telling yourself yesterday probably isn't true.
Yeah.
Most likely isn't true. And by then making that conscious decision to go, okay, I'm going to tell myself some new stories. I'm going to reconstruct some stories for today so I can have clarity. That's really where I would start with that kind of question, right? And
can I ask you something about that?
Yeah.
Because I feel
sure.
like, and I feel like I'm asking, even though it is me, I'm using myself as an example, but I feel like it's really like, this is such a thing. So I feel like I've done like so much of that work, right? But then now the evidence coming back to me is a pattern, a repeated thing. Like, how the hell did I land here again? I thought that story was changed. So now I'm thinking it's telling me that it hasn't, clearly. So now, and I'm going to do what you're saying, go back and do it again. Fine. Maybe because I'm in a different place. I don't know. But what I'm wondering is, because I do see, the concept of that set point, that the thing that unconscious part that I'm unaware of, the only time I become aware of it is when that thing shows up. Because I'm being a wise observer, and I'm not hearing those negative thoughts, but they're there, the unconscious, the unconscious is dictating. So like, I know that this is happening for me, so that I just know I need to figure this shit out, because it doesn't make sense. It does make sense, actually.
Yeah, it does make sense. And you should forgive yourself first and foremost, right? For because and we all do it, quite judgmental to yourself about the fact that, hey, I did all the work. It's not supposed to be here, right? but we live in a society, we live in a world that is selling us a bill of goods
Yeah.
that easily stokes the fires of fear or lack, right?
True.
So a lot of it is also external, but what I do, I can tell you what I do when I
Yeah.
get into those moments. It's like an alarm bell for me. So I I've got all these things on my desk that I'll like hold, or I'll point to, or I'll remind myself of. Then I will quickly get up and do a sound bath. And on Spotify, there's the most amazing, like you just have to go into Spotify and go something like healing sound bath, or healing energy, or yeah,
I love
a
that.
quick
Yeah.
a quick search in. So I'll flip on a sound bath like right away, or walk outside for 10 minutes in nature, turn up the volume on the sound bath. I've also got some great, and I'll send you a couple of links there again on Spotify. Great people that guide you through a meditation that might be like a morning activation, or I've got one that's like bringing you from 3D to 5D.
Oh, yeah.
And there's great music, and the archangels are there, and it's a bit esoteric,
Nice.
but it just allows us to quickly pivot and to not spiral down. And
Yeah.
I talk about the Flintstone moment a lot, right? It's like that moment where the two rocks meet and the spark goes. We decide, and it can happen in a millisecond, right?
Yes.
But we decide where we're going to go.
Yep.
Nobody else. Can't blame anybody else for the downward spiral or the upward spiral, but it's a choice at that Flintstone moment, at that intersection. So, and that's why it's so important, I think, to listen to your body. And Gabor Mate wrote a great book about 20 years ago called "When the Body Says No," which is all about listening to it before it turns into dis-ease. And he just recently came up. It's 500 pages. It took years to write, but the book is called "The Myth of Normal." And it's how to survive, in a toxic society, in a traumatized society.
Yes.
So yeah, listen.
Yeah. When you're in your writing, or you've written,
I'm writing it. Yeah.
Fearless. Is it writing? Yeah.
I'm writing it. Yeah. It's proving to be
Fearless.
it's proving to be a little bit tough. I have a developmental editor who's really good, and she's really making me go back to the drawing boards and ask questions. And that's why I love podcasting so much, because a lot of questions are getting answered, and I'm thinking, oh, right. Because when I tell people in the book, when I tell them to forget everything they've learned, some people are like, oh, well, what does that mean? And I'm like, oh, no, what it means is forget about the conditioning that's not serving you, and think about the conditioning that is. So it's allowing me to kind of dive into the eight points, I guess, that I'm working through.
You know what's interesting
to
me? I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, it's great. Please do.
I love it. So you know what it is, like the when you're saying that, making the decision, one of the things like I think about or talk about is just what happens in our brain when a decision's made. Like I feel like that's a power move. Making the decision, like definiteness of purpose, like saying, okay, I have decided that this is not my story. I see it. Now the decision has to be made. And I think you're saying that because, like, in the simplest form is like these neuron clusters, one is inhibited and one is firing. And then when the decision's made, there isn't that competitive, if you will, thing going on within our brain, right? So is that what you mean? Like about
that's exactly what I mean. You articulated it better than me. And it's really what a lot of Joe Dispenza is doing with his work. And 15 or 20 years ago, or even 10, some might have said, well, he's a bit of a woo-woo and a bit, crazy and energy. And did you ever see the movie What the Bleep Do We Know? That's a good classic on manifestation and things like that.
Mhm.
And Joe was in that, and everybody, Bruce Lipton and everybody was in that. And that's precisely it. So back then it was kind of woo woo, but
Mhm.
now today we're measuring all that stuff in
Well,
you can
science.
see it. You can
Yes.
see it.
Yes.
Exactly the process that you just described.
Yes.
You can see it in the brain.
Yes.
You're like, oh, well, there we go.
Yes.
So it's real.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
this whole thing, like, Alvin Toffler, I always bring up this quote because I love this quote. It's like the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write. It'll be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and learn again. So then you're saying, yeah. And so,
what's his name again?
Alvin Toffler. And the story behind him is cool too, but he was in the early 1900s. He said that quote, but and it goes in alignment with, and I'm not like showcasing, like saying just the Bible, but the scripture that says,
Sure.
Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. To me, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Exact same
It's
thing.
precisely the
It's
same
a different
thing.
message, just a different source of where it's coming from.
Yeah.
So it's like,
absolutely.
So for me, people are saying to you, like, well, how do I unlearn? I'm kind of asking you that because I'm saying, okay, wait a minute. And this is something I say in my book. I'm saying it all the time. Like, I put in the navigation system. I'm going to California. I keep ending up in the slums of Mississippi. Like, what the hell is going on here? I know I programmed it right. What the fudge? So I'm like, all right, this doesn't make any sense. So then I'm like, okay, so let's find out what map am I following here? I don't like this map. But the map is not so, but I'm stuck because I'm like, I'm trying to change the map. I know what I want the map to be. I have to discover the map I'm using. And so now I know I was neglected. I know my parents had a poverty mindset. My father was an entrepreneur. I know that I'm really successful. I'm driven. I do that. Then I get to a certain point, something happens. And then all of a sudden I'm having that same old feeling, but at a different level. It doesn't matter if it was when I was making no money. Now I'm making money. I'm still having the same damn feeling. And I'm sick of it.
Right.
And I don't want to live this way anymore. Damn it. And I'm just like,
and
I'm making the decision. I don't want this. But then I'm scared. So I look at all the evidence around me, blah, 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 and I shouldn't. And then I just want to just go to bed. Or meditate, probably, sound bath, whatever. And then I'm like, why am I still doing this? I'm a victim.
Yeah. So what you want to do, what you want to do, I think, if I was coaching you right now, or giving you some advice,
other people, but I figure I might as well get a little benefit from it. I'm sick of it.
Yeah, no, I totally understand you, and because it's just especially the lack versus abundance thing is so insidious. I totally get you. I've been through that many times. I think the work at hand is to go back in time and speak to somebody who's trauma informed, or a trauma and loss specialist. Or a grief specialist, because there's grief can manifest itself in like 20 different ways. It doesn't have to be just somebody dies or your cat dies. There's a whole bunch of changes that might have happened in your life that you may still be grieving. So that's one thing to look at: trauma, loss, and grief. Okay. But you definitely want to go back and dissect those feelings of neglect. Because again, the science is now caught up with the fact that, or neuroscience, and has caught up with the fact that those very small, not very small, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to diminish that. Those things that happened to us, or that were our lived experience when we were very young, and they're even saying it happens while you're in the mother's womb already.
Oh yeah.
That you're being conditioned.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And even it's also even connected to what your mother might have eaten, like her diet and her nutrition at the time that you're born. And then, so And but it doesn't have to take years of therapy. I mean,
Yeah.
you could do some RTT, rapid transformational therapy, some hypnosis, and get there really quickly. You could talk to a grief or trauma and loss specialist or therapist, and they'll get you out of those places real fast.
It's interesting.
Because
Like,
they know where to go.
you know what the when you're saying about like the epigenetics, like in my mother's womb, right? So now
Yep.
my mom, I know she was like such a like poverty thinking, and like they say that the baby's getting prepared for the environment that they're going into. So if you're in a like let's say a war-torn country, that it's a survival skill to be prepared for that, from so like maybe I'm still just prepared, but I'm such a abundance thinker, so yeah.
Yes, I am too. I'm right there with you, Allison. But at the same time, those things that occurred, I don't think should be underestimated. I think we underestimate the impact of those small T traumas.
Yeah.
Because they condition us for life, right?
Yeah.
That's why I needed and strived for success as a younger adult, because I'm like, I'm not going there anymore.
Yes.
Right. I want
Yes.
what grandma has. I want
Yes.
I never want to be at a shopping lane thing anymore and not have credit on the account. We can't buy food. Like,
Yes.
That stuff totally impacted me, so that in the first part of my life, I was striving to be the opposite of it. Right.
Yes.
That wasn't great. And in the second part of this sort of discovery journey, self-discovery journey, and what's my purpose? Why are we here? It's been a struggle too. And then I got this gift of letters from my mother to her best friend when I was a child. I only got this last year.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And I'm like, where did these come from? Oh, they came from her house, and the people that got it sent it to me. So my dad gave them to me. And I mean, I was never supposed to read those. I guess I was. It was a beautiful gift. But it reminded me of the childhood that was so traumatic because of precisely those things you were talking about. I thought I had an idyllic childhood. I grew up in an orchard with animals and piggies and, piggy hobby farm stuff. And then I grew up on an island in the forest. Any parent would be like, oh my God, Waldorf school, organic, super cool.
Right.
I felt I didn't belong. I felt we didn't have enough years of, then we went to Europe, and I didn't know the language. I was dropped at school, abandonment again. Like I felt,
oh my God, yes.
It all came back to me is basically what I'm saying.
Yes.
Last September, when I got this package. And what I did was, and I'm still doing it, Allison, so I'm working through that trauma too, is I rapidly went and got some coaching, some trauma and loss therapy. I signed up for our RTT, but she couldn't do it. And then I really turned up the volume on ensuring high vibrational, positive energy coming into my life every day. So music in the background, incense over here, light bright, get some sunshine. So I suppose the work at hand is to keep going back and discover what you need to get.
Yes.
Right. And then in the world today, I would surround yourself with ritual to keep your energy up. Because we all have to be proactive.
Yes.
Because otherwise the mind just goes to hell, or in a handbasket, so to speak.
That's it. So what? This is what I was thinking when you're saying this. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I'm having like all these revelations, because no matter how far I think we do this work, there's so much to discover. It doesn't matter. There's so much. And what I was thinking when you were describing, your path to like this incredible success, right? And then like I'm thinking of my drive, like and I'm like creating all of this stuff that I love, right? Which I actually love. However, this is what I just saw it. It's basically running from the thing that scares us. I don't know if it's for you, but for me, running from poverty, running from neglect, running from shame, running from, I'm gonna have a beautiful house, even though I always feel ashamed. Like I'm gonna whatever. I'm gonna look this way because I always felt ugly. I'm gonna, but when and this is what I'm considering. You tell me what you think. That to me, the origin of an action or a story played out is the real thing. So that's like the root. That's so if it's me struggling against a bad story, or if it's me, whatever I struggle against is controlling me. So then I'm always running from that thing that I'm trying to achieve something here. But if I'm achieving it, it feels like I'm achieving it from this great place. I'm helping all these people. I'm happy. I'm loving it. But really, if I stop, is my shame, is it like a train stopping and smashing, and then all my insecurities and shame, because that's what I end up experiencing. I don't get all the way down, like I'm not like in huge trouble, there's nothing major happening in my life, but it's that feeling like all the shame. So is it because I can't stop running because it's going to catch up, and now I need a different origin, I have to do it from a different place, right?
I think that's a beautiful, I think that's a really good way of describing it, is running from fear and running from the origin story.
Yeah.
So my not my wish, but my question to you then is, can you imagine how limitless you could be if you weren't running? And if you ran into that, if you ran straight back to the fear story, the origin story, and smashed it out of your life, how much more energy would you have if you weren't running? How powerful could you become? What would your light force become? That's my thing. That's my message. It's like you're totally right. I think you're running and running, but how much is that costing you energetically? How much of your fuel tank? I always use the fuel tank analogy, right? How much fuel are you expending on running away from that origin story? Okay. Bet you it's a lot. I know it is. I know it has been for me.
Yes.
It's got to be a lot. So what if you and I and our listeners decided to stop that run?
Yes.
Stop running from that fear of that origin story, whether it's shame or lack or neglect or whatever the traumas are. Run right back to it, break it apart, smash it up. It's not who you are today. It's who you were at that point in time.
I have people turn around, like if they have recurring dreams and they're running and like somebody's chasing them or whatever it is, I have them turn around. I say, when you go back to that dream, just turn around and chase it or whatever. And you know what I did like last month or something? I was noticing that I felt shame about my house. I have a beautiful house. There's nothing wrong with my house, but it's from my childhood. So I went back into my childhood in my own mind, and I just said, you know what? I'm going to remodel this shit. And I went in and I made the house exactly the way I wanted it, just in my mind. And I did it for that little girl that felt ashamed in there. I just did it, And is that kind of what you're talking about? Like,
that's a great, oh my gosh, I'm learning so much from you. That's a really good analogy as well, or practice, right? I think it's connected to also to this idea of the inner child, right? That we so often neglect, in a good way and in a bad way. Like the bad way is not going back to the origin stories, but it's also not going back to the playtime, right? The fun times, the joyous times, the moments that we were children. I was told recently, somebody said to me, what are you doing for yourself? What are you doing for your inner child? And I'm like, oh, that's a good question.
It is.
Like the super giving workaholic me doesn't give myself playtime. So I went out and I went to Staples and I bought a journal and I bought all these coloring pens, and I'm like, I used to love to design houses and draw houses and floor plans. And so I started doing that again after 40 years. So I think it can be kind of a twofold going back and smashing the part that's not serving you, right? Or remodeling the house like you did, which is a super, super cool analogy. But also remember the child, remember the play thing, the play person, play kid that was there.
I love
remember that person too,
You know, it's weird. Like one of the things, like when they talk about the inner child, which I'm sure you already know this, but basically it's like, they say that, you know, whatever the child is in, you know, shame, whatever is bothering them, right? If they can't express the emotion of that at that time, it's a survival skill to split off from it, right? So you lead, so it's this chronic like abandoning of ourselves at different times. Like, I'm not going to complain about this because there's no room for complaints. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to cry. So just like allowing ourselves to give ourselves that voice to just say whatever the truth is about it that we couldn't say, you know, which helps us, for that child can only grow in that part of us that's a child, because our whole body, like Dr. Joe says, or whatever, is just a record of memory. Our body is that. So it's just all of these memories that we actually have the power to go in, you know, because we can reframe a memory. That's why a story told over and over again is reframed. If it's told in the context of love and acceptance. If I tell you a story and I believe you care about me and it matters to you, then it's not the same as living the story with no one around that cares about you.
Yeah.
So it's relived with an emotional experience that's different.
Yeah, because you're an adult, right? And you know, as a 9-year-old or an 11-year-old being carted off to Switzerland, to a place that I didn't know the language of, I didn't know how to
traumatic.
cope. I didn't know who would I talk to. You know, so you're absolutely right. Going back in time as an adult with our lived experiences and really forgiving that moment in time and that child, and saying, hey, look, all you knew how to do was cope. This is the very best thing you could do, was cope in this way. But again, like you said, if it's in the body and it's embodied and in the body and the mind, and it's not serving you today, we can go back and exercise that.
You know, it's weird. Like, so as a shamed child, or let's say like what you're saying, like, you know, you're carted off to Switzerland,
all by myself.
So awkward and disorienting. Like, so it's like, so then in order to whatever you were having to do to survive in those experiences, how much of you had to be abandoned? Or maybe like, I know I had to work on not hating those parts of myself, the part that was complaining inside. So then, you know, now I become a super positive person. I'm hating a part of myself that feels mad or whatever. So then now that the integration has to happen in order for that part of me to grow, right? Like feel loved.
It has to, because and there's so much science around this today about trapped emotions in the body, and the microbiome being the second brain, and or heart. I forget what it is, which one it is, but this stuff is real. There are amazing authors like Gabor Mate who are doing. He's a doctor focused on trauma and early childhood trauma and how it stays in the body. And he's contextualized all, 50 years of work and overlaid it with the kind of the toxicity of the society that we live in, and is saying to us, it's a cry to change and to heal. But you're absolutely right. I think you need to go back and so you may have had fear, or you may be working with some fear, and you may be working with some anger, right? It sounds like. So a couple of areas that you could dive into really quickly with a subject matter expert in trauma, and just deconstruct it, kick it out on its butt. Kick it to the curb. You deserve it. We all deserve it. I'm still working on a few of my things too, and they're deeply embedded in us. And I've worked with people that see life and make every single decision in work and life and private, make every single decision through a lens of unworthiness.
Yes.
So it's this penny wise, pound foolish, or
Yes.
kind of thing, like
Mhm.
being so tight on I am not worthy.
Yeah.
Therefore, my Instagram post has to be this way. My language has to be this way. My Facebook's got to look like that. I'm going to make a decision in business like that. I'm going to grovel for this or grovel for that, or try and get and achieve and achieve. And it goes back to the story that we started with, I think, that it's, what I'm trying to say is all of this external stuff that we do because of the core wound of unworthiness and the origin story that we haven't dealt with. It has tremendous impact.
Yeah.
And it's so exhausting.
It really
And
is.
that's why people get depressed.
Yeah.
That's why people, oversleep, overeat, overdrink, all the coping mechanisms, right? Because of that. Now, it may that core unworthiness is affecting every single aspect of their lives.
It's so interesting. I'm thinking as you're saying, I'm getting so much insight, because even just like that core wound of unworthiness, I think I've been walking around maybe for the last, I don't know, a little while now, thinking I don't have it anymore. But then if I really look and I say the areas that I had it in, I no longer have it, but it's almost like whack the mole. Like it's like now it pops up over here.
Yes.
Now I feel unworthy in that way. But so it's really going to our heart, like going to whatever that is, that ache. Because I could even feel like if I do that, like people say in like a therapy session, I don't know. And I'm like, what is like the deepest cry of your heart? Like, what is like, you just don't know that you know. Like we know. Like if we go in, like really stop and observe.
Yep.
And it takes, like, you have to have your head, heart, feet all in the same place, be still, and just be willing to go, right?
Well, you don't have to do anything, but if you
have to do it.
Yeah. If you want to,
Yeah.
if you want to thrive in life and be free from these shackles, right? Then you've got to run back to that fear spot, got to run into the unworthiness, dive into it, dig it up, pull it out, dissect it, get some help. Or if you can't afford it, get onto YouTube, or Google. There's amazing resources out there now, right? So but it's essential. I've worked with so many people, what inside or outside of coaching doesn't really matter. They don't have to be clients, but that are limiting themselves with these beliefs that they've got. So my sort of battle cry is imagine the possibilities if you didn't have to spend the energy on that old garbage.
Yes. Right. When you were saying those 8, and I don't want to like, try and have you like say something that you don't want to, tell everyone now, but I'm curious about those 8 steps.
My 8 steps. So what are they? And gosh, they might not work for everybody. And I'm even thinking maybe they're workshops and stuff. Anyway, I'm thinking of the delivery system for the book and everything around it. But for me, it's protect yourself from negativity. So news, social media, Twitter, all that stuff. And recognize that it's a box of bonbon chocolates. Like that's what you're getting, right? That's what you're eating. So think wisely. So protect yourself. Put up a barrier of kryptonite or whatever, however you want to visualize it, against negativity, against toxicity. And I mean that with people and family and friends as well. Get them out of your life, right? So then my second point is begin to listen to yourself, okay? Because the body is always sending us messages. Listen to them. And we don't, right? We medicate them. So we live in this world of pill popping, pill pushing, doctors because of the system is just like makes your head explode, right? So listen, you have the power to heal you. Okay. Then my third one is design the picture, design the life that you want to have. Literally paint it in front of you, journal it, put it on a vision board, however you want it. But you know, it's like going back to the sailing analogy. If you don't put the precise coordinates in a boat navigation system or in a car, like, or the car too, right? If they're not precise, you're not going to get to the destination. Exactly. Right? So I'm very much about visuals. So like, do a vision board, have everything up there, paint it. What do you want the garden to look like, the bathroom to look like, kitchen to look like, friends to look like, spirituality, what are the books? You know, I've got stuff on mine that's like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but it's like, you know, it's like, stop saying yes and okay when you should be saying no thanks and fuck off, right? So it's like all these, you know, all these things. But be really specific, because if you're not if you're not the architect of the blueprint of your life, somebody else will be.
Yes.
Okay, so that's number 3. And then but you've got to break it down. So you can't just put, like, I don't know, the Ferrari up on the wall and go, oh, there's my vision board. What are the steps that right? What are the steps that you're going to take in goal setting? And Mel Robbins did a really good podcast recently about specifically about the new way of goal setting that is research and scientifically proven to be better than how we did before. So it's a breakdown. Once you've painted a very, very specific picture of your life, break it all down into its component pieces. Because if you don't break it down, then it'll all be blurry, right?
Can I ask you a question about that, or should I wait till you're done?
No, please do. You can go ahead.
Okay, so basically, I'm curious about what you think about this. So I always had a hard time creating all the specifics, but I feel like you just have to keep practicing. So I would picture just like, let's say, one balcony overlooking something, and then just add elements to it and just build out this thing. So that's what I did. But what I started to notice, and I'm curious about this, I think this might be spiritually true, but as you become more and more involved in this creation, that source starts to deliver the information to you instead of you're creating it. So you are creating it, but then I started seeing things download into it, like, wow, like a whole scenario coming to me, and almost like feeling, here's the weirdo stuff, beings in that scenario. So I feel like you're tapping into some really like heavy spiritual stuff when you do it, being a co-creator, right?
Yeah, I guess that's.
Do you think that's nutty? You could tell me.
No, right? I think that's really interesting. But that's exactly what I'm trying to say is I just had to write co-creator down because I liked that.
Because it's like you're initiating the connection, you're initiating the creation, and then as you become embodied in it, now, like,
well, you've got your cheerleaders, right?
Everybody's with you.
Everybody, the universe is participating with you because you've gone to the right radio frequency, right? And on that radio frequency, you're finding everybody else that's out there. So I totally agree with it. It is maybe a bit woo-woo and spiritual, but I think that's what's happening.
I think the whole woo-woo thing, by the way, I have to say it because I bit my tongue before and it's just taken long enough. Now I'm going to say it because I think that woo-woo shit, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think we've been sold a bill of goods. I think that it was showcased as just people who are tree huggers. I'm a tree hugger, by the way. Tree huggers are like weird. And that was showcased in our society as being weird and woo-woo, but it's really true. It's the actual truth that's been kept from us. There's your conspiracy theory. Don't tell anyone. I thought that was because you know what? The normal people who are really freaking top 1%ers who really actually use their brain, who aren't drifters, that think for themselves, are learning the truth.
Yeah, I agree.
Your pipe and smoke it. All right.
I totally agree with you. What
Sorry.
else can I?
Number
no, I don't
four.
think I can. I don't think I can add anything to that. I completely agree with you that we've been sold a bill of goods
Yes.
that is totally counterintuitive to the spiritual side of things, which is so incredibly powerful if you point your light that way. Again, for me, these sort of 8 steps are really get away from the garbage stories and the bill of goods that don't serve you and serve humanity, and pivot to over here. I love what you just said. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense to me. Sold the wrong bill of goods and woo-woo.
Yeah, look
thankfully
how it's showcased.
Now it's coming. I think it's coming, and there's an awakening, there's an arising, it feels like, around all of this, because now science and technology is proving it to be totally useful. So here we go.
Here we go. And all the antiquated systems that are supposed to be right are really the selling mediocrity to the world.
Yes. Oh, yeah, of course. Selling mediocrity, and then giving you all the coping mechanisms, alcohol, drugs, sex, porn, to stay in that numb zone. And I don't want to be numb anymore.
No, and we're taught that relationships are adversarial and like fathers are bad and clueless. Oh. We're sold everything. It's a bunch of bullshit. Hashtag bullshit 23. I'm done.
There you go.
That's my part. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking. Number 4. Yes.
I think, what did we do for? I don't know how many we have left, but certainly one of them is in the next one would be, so we're protecting ourselves from toxicity. We are designing, have a very clear picture of our life. We've broken it down into bite-sized chunks, and now you've got to do daily rituals to stay on target, because again, like you were just saying, in this modern culture that we live in, it's really easy. Like weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. It's really easy for us to get sidetracked.
Yes.
Like all day long. Just walk out the front door and get sidetracked. So I say daily rituals to stay on track, and that might be meditation. That might be I don't know, hugging crystals or studying or reading. Just make sure you do it, getting into nature, whatever it is, whatever gets you there. But again, make sure it's not like you going and doing yoga and doing all the stretching, but not embodying the spiritual side of things. You know what I mean? Like so often we'll do stuff, but it will not necessarily, it'll have that undertone of negativity. I'll be doing my downward dog and I'll be hating myself in my head. So
when you say the ritual is like connecting to source, that's what that ritual is for.
Yeah.
To be like you've got to do it every day. Field, sort of.
Do it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Okay.
Do it every day. Get grounded, take off your shoes, walk in nature.
Yeah.
All that stuff. And then the next point would be forget about what others think. Right.
I need a bigger boat. I don't know.
Yeah. Forget about what others think.
Yeah.
And
important.
There's Martha Beck just wrote a great book a couple of years ago called The Way of Integrity. Beautiful, brilliant, Harvard professor, changed everything in her life, and now is living in integrity and living free and happy and unlimited, unbridled, I guess. And my last point would be forget about what you've learned. And that, gosh, there's so much to expand in the book now that I'm thinking about it with you. But forget about what you learned is, for me, it is forget about the conditioning that you learned that is no longer serving you.
Yes.
So that's kind of connected to what we were speaking about before, is going and digging up these small or large traumas that you've had and shred them and dissect them and eviscerate them, get them out, get them gone.
I love that you said shred, because I do think those visuals, like if you can actually see it, like, like with neuro-linguistic programming. Like I have people take memories. So like, let's say you picture something in your childhood, right? And then I say, can you tell me where it is in your head? Like the actual, is it a moving picture? And then like you could actually like ask them to put a border around it and then like throw it around in their brain,
Yeah.
like shredding it, like the image. I just thought of that because then
Yeah.
you can actually do it in your head. I like that.
100%. 100%.
Sorry for all the interruptions. I get excited about shit.
No, that's it. Those are
No,
kind of
no.
my those are my 8 points.
I love them.
And after I do a few more podcasts and great conversations like this, I'll probably add elements or aspects or play with it. But
Oh
that's
yeah. I mean,
that's
I
where
love
I'd
it.
start.
So I just want to thank you so much for being here.
Oh,
There's
thank you.
all of the things about you will be in the show notes, but is there anything that you want to share before you go, or where people could find you or any of that?
Yeah, gosh, look, I'm on Instagram and I've got a website. It's just my name. And you can book a discovery call and reach out there if you want to have a conversation, or if you want to have a chat on Instagram, we can have a chat there. But that's really it. The only kind of closing thing or closing message that I say to people that are in having a hard time is it does not have to be like this.
Love that.
And you don't deserve it. And reach out. There's too many people suffering psychologically with mental illness and mental fitness and youth suicide and all of these things. We reach out. So that's really my closing thing. Doesn't have to be like this. It can change quickly, and don't do this alone. That's it.
I'm so glad that you said that, because that was one of the things I loved about what you said. And just those words, it doesn't have to be like this. I think you know it, but maybe you don't because you're saying it, that they're very, very comforting words. Like those sound waves are just someone knowing that, and it could change quickly. Like, don't quit before the miracle happens. Like that right there is so, it's like I don't know, massages the heart kind of. So I just appreciate you saying that, because because I feel it when you say it. Like, it doesn't have to be like this, and then that helps us to make that decision. No, it doesn't have to be like this. It's not going to be like this. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then you can start to tackle how your specific journey. But just so many people, I see so many people suffering in place, like not on a sort of a loop, a repetitive loop. And you can get out of that repetitive loop.
Yes. Oh God, I'm trying to say what Dr. Joe says. I know you have to go, but very quick. Like 91% of your thoughts that you are the same thoughts that you thought yesterday, and they're electrical impulses that are on a loop, and you have to use the 9% to create the thoughts that are going to change your life and live a different life. We're just living the same life over and over again with a different cast.
I love that.
That's it.
I love that. I'm gonna have to dose up on Joe tonight. I'm gonna do some Joe.
I go to all of his
dosing.
retreats. I'm there.
They're great
all the time. It's the best. All right. I am so grateful for you. It's a wrap.